Now move to the bees, which are very important also in agriculture. Our next speaker is Dr. Cleofas Cervancia. Dr. Cervancia is a professor emeritus based at the Institute of Biological Sciences. She studied at UPLB and pursued postdoctoral fellowship training in apiculture and pollination biology at the University of Wales, Cardiff. She is a multi-awarded scientist, and the most notable are the Lingkod Bayan Presidential Award and the Mount Everest Pollination Award. At present, she is still actively engaged in bee research, mentoring young researchers and students. Her most significant contribution to the nation is the development of pollination technologies using stingless bees and bee product standardization. She connects the Philippines and the rest of the Asian region to the world beekeeping community as president of Asia Commission of Apimondia, an international federation of beekeepers association. Dr. Cervancia.
And start video. Start video. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, a pleasant day to everybody. My talk for today is part of our pollination biology research at the Institute of Biological Sciences. So yeah, I'll be discussing about the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees. All right, now in agriculture, we use farm inputs. Like for example, entomologists use insecticides to mitigate pests. Plant pathologists would use fungicides for diseases. Agronomists would look into fertilizers. And of course, the plant breeders will choose the best variety of crops. Now, the aim of which is to provide conditions for plant growth and high yield. But granting that all enabling conditions are present, these alone are not enough to cause fruit setting. That's why pollinators play a key role, especially in plants requiring outcrossing. So pollinator is equal to food because at least 1/3 of the world's agricultural crops depend upon pollination provided by insects and other animals. Now, pollinators regulate ecosystem services. 87.5% of flowering wild plants depend on animal pollination, 94% in the tropics, 78% in temperate, and 3/4 of food products or crops benefit from animal pollination. And what are these animals? Now, the bird is one of them. Now, flowers pollinated by birds are colorful with long tubular structure, provide ample nectar and diurnal anthesis. Now, the bees came into evolution when larger flowers emerged. So there is really a match between the pollinators and the flowers. Now, the butterflies as well pollinate brightly colored flowers, open at daytime, provides nectar, long corolla tube, and only the proboscis of this butterfly can access that most sought nectar. You cannot produce durian without the bats. Now, because durian is strictly pollinated by bats, but of course, if you do hand pollination, you can have some fruits. Now, take note that the anthesis or the flower of the durian opens at night and it is harmonized with the behavior of the bats. So, nocturnal anthesis and the nocturnal pollinator as well. Now, the beetles pollinate this commercial or industrial plant. This is the African oil palm that opens also at daytime. Leathery, tough petals, because as you know, the beetles, they have strong mandibles. Scented, the flower may be white, pale green, or burgundy. Okay, let me tell you about the bees. Now, the bees pollinate bright colored flower with landing board, scented, opens at daytime, and would offer nectar and pollen. Now, what's so fascinating about the bee is floral fidelity. So, honesty, fidelity still holds water. Now, because they are loyal to one species of flower in one foraging trip. Now, if they are not loyal, now, the flower of cucumber, the pollen of cucumber will not work with squash or the ampalaya. Now, Asia is haven for bee. Now, this is the seat for pollinator diversity, but this is also the hotspot for biodiversity. So the more we need to conserve our pollinator species, such as the solitary bees. Now, if in the global arena, pollination arena, you have heard the so-called colony collapse disorder. Actually, these are the population of solitary bees are the ones threatened. And we have our social bees, namely the bumblebee. They pollinate tomato, eggplant, and pepper. We have just concluded one PhD study, dissertation on the pollination of Solanaceae. And then we have the honeybee. Now, if you are very fond of bees and you are afraid of sting, why not go for stingless bee, which is the bee of the future for New Asia. Now, one of the contributions of the Philippines, specifically UP Los Baños, with the Department of Agriculture, Bureau of Agricultural Research, is the development of technologies for pollination using stingless bees in large-scale model. Now, this has been adopted in the Philippines and now being shared to neighboring Asian countries. Now, let me discuss to you pollination by which I can infuse the concept of management. Mango is one of the crops laden with pesticides, starting with flower induction. Now, what we did, we studied floral biology, specifically anthesis and longevity. Now, it is very important. Botany is very important. You need to know when the flowers open or the blooming period. And then the foraging rates refer to the visitation patterns of our visitors, such as pollinators, time of the day they are there, how many flowers they visit, or indeed, are they really pollinating? And of course, we need to quantify the effects of pollinators on fruit set. Now, our results indicated that natural pollinators are scarce in large plantation because, as you see, monoculture is practiced. Stingless bee, Tetragonula, is the primary pollinator of mango. We compared it with the honeybee species. Now, we observed some fly species, which we considered as secondary. And the introduction of colonies of stingless bees increased fruit setting by 42 to 98%. May I invite your attention to this very important graph? We monitor the floral vegetation relative to time. So as you see, from 6 o'clock to 12, we do this depending on the species of crop. Now take note that during early morning hours, there are not too many visitors and the number will progress. It will increase as time progresses, reaching at a peak at around 8 o'clock. And then you have there higher, significantly higher at 7 to until 10 o'clock, and the population diminishes during late morning hours, and after 12 noon, there are no more pollinators. So what does this tell us? Now we found out that the amount of nectar is highest during the peak of anthesis. The pollen are more viable, most viable, and the stigma are most receptive. So we call this the pollination window. Again, we strongly recommend for pollinator conservation, should you decide to use any chemical, take note, be it non-synthetic or organic, never do it during this peak of anthesis because the pollinators are most abundant and you will be killing them. So do it at other times of the day. And this should hold true to other crops. No floral biology, no the anthesis. And then develop bee pasture. Now, because we all know that crops do not bloom throughout the year. So we would like to keep the pollinators in our farm. Now, plant diverse bee forage. Now, this is also a product of our research. We are able to identify the best bee plants. So you can beautify the farm, and moreover, it can diversify the farm. So in the context of IPM, we say that diverse ecosystem will be better in mitigating pest control. So in a nutshell, the conservation strategy would involve using of agricultural inputs wisely. Do not apply pesticides at anthesis during early morning hours, but for durian that opens at night, and also some crops like dragon fruit, now it's a different story. Let us not overhand wild colonies, especially the stingless bees. And lastly, develop the bee pasture. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dr. Cervancia, because I saw that. Okay, now